The war to take out the Iranian threat continues to dominate the news cycle as things continue to show positive movement. Another round of peace talks in Pakistan could happen soon. The stock market hit a record high today, and the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports continues to hold as an additional 6,000 American troops head to the Middle East. But not that long ago, a different story was on the TV day and night, the impeachments of Donald Trump. And this week brought a major development in the first impeachment, one you might have missed. Back in 2019, President Trump had a phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Concerned about corruption, President Trump mentioned Hunter Biden. Democrats saw this as an opportunity to go after Trump and impeach the first-term president for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. But now, thanks to the efforts of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, we know a lot more about how that impeachment came together. According to documents released by DNI Gabbard, the supposed whistleblower who kicked off all of this didn't even hear the phone call and only had a second-hand knowledge of it. The intelligence community's inspector general didn't go through a thorough investigation and only talked to 4 people, some of whom were known to be anti-Trump. The IG went outside the bounds of his office and had his referrals dismissed by the Department of Justice as unwarranted. House Democrats, namely Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff, jumped on it anyway. And new tonight, DNI Gabbard has sent criminal referrals of her own based on what she found. You may have noticed that the U.S. intelligence chief rarely does interviews, but tonight she spoke to us exclusively. Here it is. Director Gabbard, thank you so much for being here. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Katie. Thanks.
So, of course, there is an ongoing war and ceasefire with Iran. President Trump this morning talked about potentially the war being over soon. We had the CIA director last week giving a briefing to reporters at the White House. Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane has talked about this extensively alongside Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was also at the White House today talking about this issue. That is a threat to the United States, and it is being handled, and information is coming out every single day from CENTCOM about the updates on what is happening. But another threat to our constitutional republic is when the intelligence community is weaponized for political purposes. You released new documentation this week showing what happened in the lead up to the impeachment of President Donald Trump in 2019. Can you tell us what you found and why now to release and declassify this information to the public?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. You know, first and foremost, it is always the right time to expose the truth to the American people about the deep state tactics that have been used time and time again, fundamentally to undermine the foundational principles of our republic, and in so many cases to undermine the decisions that the American people make when they cast their votes in our elections to decide who they want to lead our country. And so the documents that we released really pointed to the fact that the 2019 impeachment occurred because there were members of the intelligence community working directly with House Democrats, specifically Adam Schiff, who's on the House Intelligence Committee at the time, concocting this narrative, weaponizing the whistleblower process, lying and abusing their power, all to create this manufactured basis that Nancy Pelosi then used to drive this impeachment against Donald Trump in 2019. I'll hit the high points on these documents. There are details and hundreds of pages of transcripts that we released in conjunction with House Intel Chairman Rick Crawford. But the bottom line is this. Number one, the whistleblower, so-called whistleblower who came forward, presented no evidence and no first-hand knowledge. This is a person who had heard about a conversation that President Trump had with Zelensky, then went straight to Adam Schiff on the House Intelligence Committee. And this is where they came up with this false narrative. And this so-called whistleblower then went and filed a complaint with the intelligence community Inspector General. The other witness, so-called witness to this, is somebody who also had zero first-hand knowledge and presented zero evidence, someone who was also a co-author of the 2017 Russia hoax intelligence community assessment that President Obama had ordered be created in conjunction with John Brennan and James Clapper at the time. Again, no first-hand knowledge or evidence, and someone who said that even after reading the transcript, he didn't really see the issue there until the whistleblower had explained it to him. And lastly, the Inspector General himself, and this is really such a violation of public trust and the responsibility that we expect all of our inspectors generals to have, in that he didn't conduct a full investigation. He didn't even ask to see the transcript of the phone call between President Trump and Zelensky, and he admitted to Congress that he did not have any evidence that he was relying on. He had made a criminal referral to the Department of Justice based on this so-called whistleblower's complaint. Department of Justice came back and said there's nothing here. This Inspector General then went to Congress anyway and presented it to them. All of this coming down to the bottom line of which this was a partisan political attempt, once again, to undermine the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump as President of the United States.
I want to get back to the Department of Justice in just a second, but you talked about the criminal, or the referral and the lack of firsthand information. So in the lead up to the impeachment of President Trump, the standard was it had to be firsthand information. And then right before he happened to go through this impeachment process, the standard changed to being able to use secondhand information, even if it were unreliable and deemed unreliable by the Inspector General. Why was that standard changed?
This is something that, again, there's further lies being told in the transcripts of this former Inspector General Atkinson when he went and testified before the House Intelligence Committee, where he was directly asked this question that you're asking here now. And he's making claims, oh, well, the law required me to do it. That's complete nonsense. The law did not require him to do it. The responsibility is with the Inspector General to deem whether or not a complaint is credible and whether or not it is urgent. How do you find a complaint to be credible when there is zero evidence provided and there is zero firsthand knowledge provided, not only by the whistleblower, by any witness in this case, and when the Inspector General himself did not even request to see the documents that these individuals are referencing in their false accusations. And so it was obviously, to me, part of this plot to change the standard, which the Inspector General did, from requiring that there be either evidence or firsthand knowledge presented in order to determine whether or not a complaint is credible, to merely allowing for hearsay and nothing else. This fed into this manufactured narrative.
Yeah, is it ever appropriate for politicians to be working with the intelligence community behind the scenes on an impeachment probe?
No, and this is why the fact that the so-called whistleblower, instead of going directly to the Inspector General and filing a complaint, the fact that this whistleblower went directly to the House Intelligence Committee and Adam Schiff specifically and his team really points to the politicization of intelligence and the intelligence community. And again, the whistleblower process, which is really egregious because it is the channel for those to come and report complaints about things like politicized intelligence and the tactics of the deep state being deployed.
Well, and then let's not forget that Adam Schiff repeatedly lied about having any contact ahead of time with this so-called whistleblower after the standards were changed so that they could move forward with this in a political fashion right ahead of an election year. But regarding accountability, today your office sent criminal referrals to the Department of Justice related to your findings in this case. Can you talk to us about why you decided to do that and which laws you believe were broken?
It's important to push for accountability. First step is exposing the truth to the American people. That is a huge step towards accountability because the more we shine a light on the truth of these deep state tactics to undermine our republic and the will of the American people, the more likely it is that we have hope for change. Accountability can come after the presentation of the truth, and in this case, documents that had not been released publicly before. I'm leaving it up to the lawyers and the Department of Justice to take a look at this and to determine the specific legal parameters, but it was important for us to refer this along with all of the information that we have so that the Department of Justice can do exactly that and investigate it.
Director Gabbard, President Trump has tasked you with ridding the intelligence community of political influence, of weaponization. What is the status of that? And what is your message to those who say that you're coming out with this report as a distraction, there isn't really a political issue happening within the intelligence community, and that you're just using it as a way to get at Democrats in an election year? Why is this important?
You know, those who often respond with those kinds of diatribes and kind of a lack of substantive response to the real issue at hand really point to the fact that what we are exposing to the American people has such huge consequences, and it really points to usually the critics, the Democrat critics' culpability in this, both those who were involved and those who knew about it. The time is always right to expose the truth. We know that the deep state rot within the intelligence community has existed for a very long time, and it is very deep. As we continue to discover new examples of these tried and true tactics that have been deployed, unfortunately, time and time again, we're going to continue to expose that truth. Once again, just by shining a light on the truth, we have the opportunity for the American people to now recognize if they try to use these tactics again, we are all watching and we are all standing on guard because we stand to protect our republic.
Well, we hear a lot about the need to protect democracy, and I can't think of something worse than attacking our constitutional republic by politicizing and weaponizing the intelligence community against American voters and against the people that they elect. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, great to see you. Thank you for your work, and I look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.